Okay, so cybersecurity. It's a jungle out there, right?
Mhm.
And today we're going on safari. We're going to explore the who, the why, the what to watch out for, even if tech isn't really, your thing.
You're exactly right. It's easy to get lost in the jargon. And most people, they think firewalls, they think passwords. That's cybersecurity.
Right, lock it up and we're good.
But it's so much more than that. It's about psychology. It's about human nature. Our weaknesses, our blind spots, that's what makes us vulnerable.
Yeah, that whole social engineering thing, that really got me. I mean, wow, the way they play on our emotions, our trust, it's scary.
It is scary because it works. It just takes one slip up, one wrong click.
And boom, they got you.
Exactly. And it's not always some, shadowy figure in a hoodie.
Right, right.
Well,
Like, who are these attackers?
Well, that's what's so important to understand. There are different types, different motives. It's like, I don't know, think of it like a spectrum.
Okay, a spectrum. I like that. So on one end, we've got,
On one end, you've got your black hat hackers, your classic bad guys, out to cause chaos, steal data, you name it.
the Hollywood hacker, basically.
Pretty much money, revenge, sometimes just the thrill of it. That's what drives them.
Okay. And on the other end,
The opposite end, you've got your white hat hackers.
the good guys.
Yeah, the good guys. These are the ethical hackers, security researchers. They use their skills for good.
So they're finding the weaknesses before the bad guys can exploit them.
Exactly. They're like digital detectives, if you will.
I like it. But then there's another group, right? The source material mentioned.
You're thinking about the gray hat hackers.
What's in between?
Yeah, a little murky. Sometimes they're, operating in a legal gray area.
A little bit of both.
Right. Might expose vulnerabilities, but maybe for their own gain, too. Hard to pin down.
Fascinating. But it's not just individuals, right? We're talking like entire countries getting in on this.
Oh, absolutely. Nation-state actors are a huge factor in cyberspace. Think sophisticated tools, massive resources,
And their goals are?
espionage. They're after government secrets, corporate data, anything that gives them an edge.
So like a digital arms race.
Exactly. And sometimes it's hard to tell where espionage ends and, something more dangerous begins. Cyber warfare is a real threat.
High stakes. And speaking of threats, the ways these cyber criminals are cashing in, I mean, it's evolving faster than, well, everything.
Right. Credit card theft, that's almost old news now. We're talking identity theft,
Yeah.
ransomware.
Ransomware. That one's terrifying. They basically hold your data hostage,
Pretty much. Encrypt your files, demand payment to unlock them.
and people pay.
You'd be surprised. They hit you where it hurts, businesses, personal files, even medical records.
Brutal. Okay, then there's this other thing, crypto miners.
Oh, yeah, that's a sneaky one. Basically, malware that uses your computer's power to mine cryptocurrency.
So they're making money, and I'm just clueless.
Exactly. You might not even notice it happening. Until your computer starts slowing down, maybe?
Yikes. Okay, so we've got your straight-up criminals, but the source material also talked about hacktivists. That's a whole different thing, right?
Right. Hacktivists aren't motivated by money, at least not directly. It's about ideology.
So, like digital protests, making a statement.
Exactly. Defacing websites, leaking information, disrupting services, anything to draw attention to their cause.
Even if it's for a good cause, that's still legal, right?
Oh, absolutely. The law doesn't really care about your motives. Hacking is hacking.
Right, right. Okay, so we've got outside threats, but what about inside jobs? I mean, sometimes the most dangerous threats are closer than you think, right?
Absolutely. Insider threats can be devastating. We're talking employees, contractors, anyone with legitimate access.
The people you trust.
Exactly. And they can do a lot of damage. Revenge, financial gain. Sometimes it's ideological, too.
So how do you even combat that?
It's tough. Strong internal controls, background checks, fostering a culture of security awareness. It's an ongoing effort.
It makes you realize it's not just about the tech.
Not at all. It's about the people using it and the choices we make every day.
And sometimes those choices, well, let's just say we don't always make the best ones, do we?
We're only human, right?
So we've talked about all these different players, different motives, but sometimes the biggest threat to our cybersecurity isn't some mastermind hacker in a far-off land. Sometimes it's us.
You hit the nail on the head. We humans, we're creatures of habit. And sometimes those habits, well, they don't exactly translate well to the digital world.
Right. The source material really emphasized how often it's human error that creates the opening for an attack. Whether it's clicking on a phishing link, forgetting to update software, or misconfiguring a security setting, our mistakes can have big consequences.
And it's not about being tech savvy or not, really. I mean, we all make mistakes. We get distracted, we rush through things, and boom, suddenly we've accidentally given away the keys to the kingdom.
Exactly. Like when you accidentally reply to a phishing email instead of just hitting delete. Or that time I reset my entire phone trying to change my ringtone. Not my finest moment.
We've all been there. But the thing is, those seemingly small slip-ups, they create opportunities for cybercriminals. And those opportunities, they don't always look like what we might expect. It's not always some dramatic hack. Sometimes it's taking advantage of our own forgetfulness or our tendency to trust a little too easily.
Right, like those phishing emails that look like they're from a friend or a company we know. It's easy to let your guard down if you're not paying close attention.
Exactly. And it plays into that human element of cybersecurity. They're not hacking into systems, they're hacking into our minds or emotions. And that can be really hard to defend against, especially with the sheer volume of information we're all bombarded with these days.
It's true. Our brains can only process so much.
Yeah.
And with the ever-growing number of devices, platforms, and passwords we're expected to manage, it's no wonder we sometimes drop the ball.
Exactly. And that's why awareness is so important. Being mindful of our own vulnerabilities, practicing good cyber hygiene, these are simple things that can make a huge difference. But it's not just about individual mistakes, is it? The source material also highlighted how real-world events, natural disasters, can have a huge impact on cybersecurity.
Right, like if a hurricane takes out a data center or a wildfire knocks out power to a whole region, suddenly we're not just talking about inconvenience, we're talking about critical infrastructure, essential services being disrupted.
And it highlights how interconnected everything is these days. The digital and the physical worlds, they're not separate spheres anymore. They're intertwined. So when disaster strikes in one, it inevitably impacts the other.
It's a good reminder that cybersecurity isn't just about protecting our data, it's about protecting our way of life. And that requires a broader perspective, a recognition of how these different threats, both digital and physical, can converge and create vulnerabilities we might not have even considered. But while we're on the topic of vulnerabilities, there's another aspect of cybersecurity that's been getting a lot of attention lately, and that's data privacy.
Absolutely. Data privacy and cybersecurity, they go hand in hand. And the source material didn't shy away from exploring these sometimes uncomfortable realities of how our personal information is being collected, used, and potentially misused in today's digital landscape.
Yeah, that section on social media platforms, that was a real eye-opener. I mean, we all know these platforms collect data, but seeing it laid out like that, the sheer volume of information they have about our habits, our preferences, even our locations, it's a bit unsettling, to say the least.
It is unsettling. And it raises a lot of questions about where the line is between convenience and intrusion, between personalization and manipulation. Because that data, it's not just being used to show us targeted ads. It can be used to influence our decisions, shape our opinions, even predict our behavior.
And it's not just social media companies either. The source material touched on how governments and corporations are also collecting vast amounts of data on individuals.
Exactly. And the technology for collecting and analyzing this data, it's only becoming more sophisticated. So the question is, in this age of big data, how do we balance the benefits of technology with the right to privacy? How do we ensure that our personal information is being used responsibly and ethically? Those are big questions.
Huge questions, and questions that I think we're only just beginning to grapple with as a society. So much to unpack here. It's clear that cybersecurity is way more than just like remembering a complicated password,
Absolutely. It's a complex issue, constantly evolving.
which can feel overwhelming, honestly. So for our listeners who are, maybe a little freaked out right now, what are the key takeaways you want them to remember?
Well, first off, don't panic. Knowledge is power, right? Understanding the threats, that's the first step to protecting yourself.
Right, know your enemy.
Exactly. And second, a healthy dose of skepticism goes a long way. Don't just click on every link. Don't trust every email. Think before you act online, just like you would in the real world.
Good advice for, like, everything in life, honestly.
Pretty much. But yeah, with cybersecurity, little things make a big difference.
So being careful about what we share, thinking twice before we click, that's a good start.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to add questions, If something seems off, trust your gut. There are resources out there, people you can talk to. You don't have to be a tech whiz to navigate the digital world safely.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, but also a little concerning. It feels like the threats are just constantly evolving, getting more sophisticated. So where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Technology is always advancing, so staying ahead of the curve is an ongoing process. But that's where the human element comes in again. Our adaptability, our ability to learn and adjust, that's going to be crucial.
So stay informed, stay vigilant, and maybe, just maybe, be a little wary of that free USB drive you found in the parking lot.
Now you're getting it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing your expertise. And to our listeners, until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you out there in the digital world.